Shanti. Are you all happy? So today we are going to discuss about why Islam prohibits Muslims from consuming pork while they allow Muslims to eat all other non-vegetarian foods. It's more like how Hindus protest against consuming cows while they can feed on other non-vegetarian foods. So they both fall on the same category because pig is an animal, cow is an animal, goat is an animal. If you have no problem eating goat, then what's the problem with eating pig and cow? So in a recent video by Zakir Naik's son Fariq Naik, he was saying that because it was mentioned in Quran at so and so places, and also he said that even in Bible it is said we shouldn't consume pork, and also he quoted I think from Manusmriti that it was mentioned that we shouldn't eat pork and onion, so we don't eat pork. But why? Why is Quran saying that? That's the actual question. It's not that it is because mentioned in Quran we are doing that. Because in all religions, especially these three main religions, Hinduism, Christianity and Islam, there are many places where God asks others to kill. So just because it is mentioned there, are we authorized to kill each other? So why? So that reply doesn't actually answer the actual question. Why should they not eat pork or beef? Why? Because if you don't consume non-vegetarian food, we can understand we don't want to hurt animals, but it is okay to hurt certain animals but not this animal. Why? In Hinduism, okay, they say that we consider them to be the mother. Okay, at least we have some sort of answer. But here pork is not, I don't think anybody is considering pig to be the mother or father of any religious people. So what's wrong in consuming pig? Here in India, you may say that in villages pork feed on human excreta, but that's not the case at the international level. Maybe that's only in India. Even in India, they grow white pigs, they feed them with vegetarian foods. So now what's wrong with eating pork? Then he says, like any other religious preachers of any religion, that it is also scientifically justified. Consuming pork leads to have some intestinal problems. There will be certain kind of worms. Well, that's the case with any other non-vegetarian food. Any non-vegetarian food, if not properly cooked, that will eventually lead to all sort of intestinal problems and stomach upset. We will get the actual answer to this question if I ask another question. Islam prohibits men and women to have homosexual sex. Why? Because it is said in Quran, it is also said in Bible, it is also mentioned in Hinduist scriptures. Is that the reason? But why? Yes, it is mentioned, but why have they mentioned? So it prevents Muslims to have homosex, it prevents them to have sex from backwards, it prevents the use of tongue during sexual process. But why? Do you think Muslims are actually following all these procedures? I really doubt it. But is it actually possible to avoid these kind of sexual processes? Yes, it is possible. The only way that it is possible is to avoid sex altogether, or else it is completely impossible, especially at this point of time. If you see a Muslim standing in the shop where they sell pork, then he will be ashamed. So you can prevent Muslims from buying pork. You can say that we won't allow you into mosque if we see you consuming pork. But what about sex? How do you know whether or not he is following everything that's mentioned in Quran? Nobody is going to watch that. And which is more sinful? Having pork or having those abnormal sexual processes that was once considered abnormal? I don't think it's considered abnormal now. At this point, I don't think he may quote from Bible that even that forbids, because almost 99% of Bible and Quran remains the same. And he couldn't quote any Hindu scriptures, because even in temple it's quite evident that you can see all sorts of sexual acts in many temples as statues. So one may say that if you have faith in God, you should follow every letter of Quran. So don't ask question. If that's the case, how about killing? That's mentioned in all religious scriptures. Should we also follow that? But if some group follows that, then we would say no, they are not Muslims. We say that even they quote that it is written in Quran and Bible and also Hindu scriptures. So are we going to follow everything blindly without asking any question? And finally, while ending that video, he said, if you consume pigs, then you will swap each other's wives like Americans do, like pigs do, because pigs do that. They eat pig, that's why they behave like pigs. I don't think Americans do it, not everybody. Maybe there will be minority of them. That will be very less in number actually, but that is not restricted to America. That is spread. That culture is spread across the globe, but at a very minor level now. But if you don't check that out, that's going to spread universally to a very major level at a very faster rate. And he said that pigs swap. I don't know. See, how about goat? Do you think it doesn't? Because they use only a single male goat to copulate many female goats. So if you are taking goat mutton, so does it mean you are going to do the same thing? So if that's the case, if consuming an animal is going to get you the same character, especially sexual character, then it's better to avoid all animals, because all animals do that. So you should be a strict vegetarian, which means you have to become Hindu, because that's what Hinduism is all about. If you follow Hinduism strictly, then you are considered to be someone of upper caste. If you ignore the amount of the Hinduism rituals that you ignore, and you will be considered that much inferior. That's why caste system is there only in Hinduism. Actually, to get the actual solution to this question about why Islam prohibits consuming pork, we have to seek the answer for my second question about why Islam and Christianity prohibits homosexuality and certain sexual processes. Let's see, if a particular religion, whether it's Christianity or Hinduism or Islam, it is mentioned that all sort of sexual activities is permitted except ejaculation. Only ejaculation is very sinful. Reaching orgasm is very sinful. You can indulge in any other sensual pleasures. So what could be the possible reason for saying that? Because how is it possible for you to avoid ejaculation? The only way is not to start even the initial stages of sex, because once you start it, you are going to undoubtedly progress further until you reach the climax, that is the ejaculation or orgasm. If it is mentioned ejaculation is a sin, it obviously means sex itself is a sin. It doesn't mean you shouldn't only ejaculate, you can do everything else. Likewise, if they say consuming pork is a sin, no matter what religion said that, it obviously means you should stop eating any non-vegetarian food, because that will eventually lead you to consuming pork. Because as Fariq Naik mentioned, in India it was consuming on human excreta. So that's like the ugliest creature. That's true. But once you get addicted to eating non-vegetarian foods, you would definitely end up eating pork when you have no other choice, when you have no other food, when only pork is an option. So that's definitely going to happen. So the only way to avoid getting into that stage is to tie your tongue, to keep the tongue under your control, not getting addicted to non-vegetarian foods. It is mentioned at many places in Bible. It is actually cursing those who consume non-vegetarian foods. Of course, there are even some places where they say God allows you to eat these kinds of animals, but that's mentioned in very few places compared to the other places where they condemn eating non-vegetarian food. Similarly, regarding why they have forbidden certain sexual acts, it obviously means that if you start getting addicted to sex, you will eventually end up doing all sorts of things they have banned. Now you can see in all medias they are showing all those forbidden acts very attractively. So if you say Muslims should not see movies, then okay, we can accept that. But if you permit them watching movies, if you permit them having sex, then you can't just prevent them from having certain forbidden acts, because they have already become that addicted. Now we are seeing all religious men, religious preachers, whether it's Muslim leaders or pastors of Christianity or Hindu saints, even they fall for lust nowadays. Of course, they spend much of their time reading holy scriptures. Even that couldn't make them have control over lust. So needless to say about ordinary men and women, because they're not that much attached to religious scriptures. So just think how weak they would be. Do you think they would refrain from those forbidden sexual acts? So as I mentioned earlier, the actual meaning of forbidding those acts is you should refrain from having sex. That's the only thing. See, they have mentioned, if you follow the things that's mentioned in Quran, what you get as a prize in heaven, you will get pure wives. So does it not mean that what the wives we have now is impure? So what does it mean to have pure wives? It means they are innocent of sex. They don't even know what sex is. So that's the kind of life we will be having in heaven. Then what's the need for wife if you don't have sex? That's the question. Actually, girls are not made for sex. It applies to guys as well. But now we are in Kali Yuga, the old world, where we are brainwashed into thinking that girls have certain parts that's created exclusively for sex. Is that so? I don't think so. There are certain parts of girl's body that's different from a male's body, but that's purely to feed the newborn child and to give birth to the child. That's it. That's what it is made of. It's not made for having sex, but we tend to think like that. Not only those parts, we now tend to think that even lips are made for sex, right? Lips are made for kissing. Is that made for that? It's made for talking, right? But as we get more and more weak in terms of soul power, we tend to think everything as made for sex. Even girls' voice, it is sweet, so they think it is sweet to provoke men into having sex. Of course, they will think very soon like that. Maybe already some of them are thinking like that. The truth is, whether it's Quran or Bible or Srimad Bhagavad Gita, everything was written by humans, not by God, not with the help of God. Well, it has some knowledge of God, but most of them are knowledge of men. That's why we get confused. At certain places, we really confront the knowledge of God, but at other places, it's just the knowledge of men, or we can call that as Saturn, because there is no one called Saturn. It is the man's knowledge that is called satanic knowledge or devil's knowledge. To understand the truth of what I'm saying, you should be familiar with God's direct knowledge, which He gives in the end of the world, and that's exactly now. God says it is just a 5,000-year time cycle called Kalpa, and God created this world as heaven in the beginning, and it continued to be heaven for the first 2,500 years. And we were created as deities in the beginning, and we Hindus worship those deities. They do not even know that we were originally deities in the beginning. After taking several rebirths, we come to hell, because after the completion of first 2,500 years, this world which was once heaven becomes hell gradually. And we are now in the end of Kali Yuga. So at the final stage of Kali Yuga, that is the last 100 years of Kali Yuga, God Himself comes from His supreme abode. He was there as a point of light. He is also a soul just like us. So we are souls. We are souls. Soul will be like a tiny point of light in between the eyebrows, which is why Hindus have the habit of wearing some religious symbols like dot or some fancy symbols in between the eyebrows to mark the place where we actually exist. We are those imperishable souls and not this perishable body that just covers up the soul. See, we like to share our problems with our friends, our relatives. To put simply, we share with other humans. We don't share our feelings with the dogs and horses or pigs, do we? Because we know for sure they can't understand us. Likewise, we share our feelings, deep feelings, with God. Does it not mean that He is also a soul just like us? Yes, He is. But why is it that nobody has seen God? Because He doesn't take birth like us. He remains as a soul all the time, which is why in Hinduism we call as Sada Shiv, which means He is always as a point of light. He doesn't take birth like us from a mother's womb. Despite that, He has to come to this planet Earth to reveal certain secrets to us so that He can save us from all the sorrow and pain that this world is filled with, especially during Kali Yuga. So he comes here, he needs to save us, so he has to tell the truth. But without the body, how can he speak? That's why he enters an old man's body and start giving the direct gyan or knowledge. And he names that old man as Brahma. This is how Brahma creates the world. Brahma doesn't create the world. It is God Shiv who enters Brahma and creates the new world. So it doesn't mean he creates something that didn't exist before. This world always exists as science says. We humans also always exist. Only difference is God comes in the end when the world has become utter old, and he renews the world back to its new position. So in heaven, the world would be filled with gold and diamonds and filled with people with divine characters. Not only humans, even animals would be very loving to each other. Unlike Kali Yuga, they don't feed on each other, they feed on plants. They don't feed on animals, whether it's lion or tiger. Even they consume only grass and other plants. They don't eat other animals. It is also mentioned in Bible in the very first chapter. So in Genesis first chapter, you will find that God says that I have created plants as a food for both humans and other animals. So that's the actual creation of God. God doesn't have his role other than this time. He comes in the end to create the new world. So that's it. After creating it, he just goes to his place of residence called Parandam or Parlok. So because he created the perfect world, there is no need for him to come. And also we don't call God there, because heaven will be filled with happiness. Everything we see gives happiness. Everybody speaks so lovingly that we feel utterly peaceful and blissful. So that's why we were called deities, because we were having those divine characters. Deities are nothing but humans with divine qualities. So that was the case for first 2500 years, and they were not aware of lust, anger, greed, attachment and ego. You know why? Because they would be equal to God but not God. That's why we worship them. What do I mean by equal to God? It means they would be as pure as God. That's why they do not know what lust, anger, greed, attachment and ego is. God doesn't know it either. So how is it possible for them? Actually, they would be very beautiful. So compared to the beauty queens of Kali Yuga, they would be multi-million fold beautiful. So imagine for yourself how beautiful they would be. So they would be that beautiful, but still they wouldn't have criminal eyes to lust on each other. How is that possible? Because they wouldn't consider themselves to be this perishable body. Instead, they would consider themselves to be the imperishable soul that operates this body, just like a driver operates a car. Just because car is under his control doesn't mean he is the car. Driver is entirely different from car. Similarly, soul is entirely different from this body. It enters and it leaves. So when it leaves, we call that process to be death. But death is just for the body, because once the soul leaves, we consider this body to be dead. And where does the soul go? It takes another body. So rebirth, it goes several rebirths till the end. In the end, it has to go back to where it came from. This is the home of the souls, which is why it is also called soul world. For the first 2500 years, there wouldn't be lust, anger, greed, attachment or ego, because they were not body conscious. Instead, they were soul conscious. Not only that, they will be very happy for two reasons. First, there is no voices to cause them sorrow or pain. And second, and very important factor is, since they were soul conscious, they have to be very happy, because the nature of soul itself is the embodiment of bliss and peace. So now, after the completion of 2500 years, we started experiencing body consciousness instead of soul consciousness. That's when we fall prey to these sensual pleasures, thereby becoming slaves of these five vices, thereby causing ourselves so much pain, because the amount of addiction increases day by day. So yes, the sorrow and pain, and there is no escape, no matter how many religions come into being. Actually, religions come into being only in the hell, not in heaven, because in heaven we didn't worship God, because we didn't think of God. There was nothing to worry about. So we would think of God only when there is something that causes sorrow, right? So there's no need for that. Only in hell, when we started experiencing pain, we automatically remember our Father, God Shiv. This God Shiv is called Allah by Muslims. He is called Heavenly Godfather by Christians. So God is one. He comes in the end. He gives His knowledge only now. So He didn't send any messenger to write Quran or Bible or Gita or anything. If at all there were messengers of God, it is none but us. Yes, we are spreading the true message of God. See, if Muhammad or Jesus Christ happened to be the messengers of God, the first message they would have revealed is how God looks like, because that's the billion-dollar question. There was no mention of that in any religious text. So only God comes and He says, not only me, not only God, but also we look like a very tiny point, imperishable souls. So you need to consider yourselves to be this tiny point of light, and we have to remember the Father of all souls, God Shiv, who is also a point of light. And that place of residence would be golden red colored light world. So we have to remember God as a point of light, or as a star that shines in the golden red colored sky. That's how we have to remember, and we have to remember Him to wash off all these sins that we have been accumulating for several births in the past. So sins are nothing but these five vices. Anything we do out of the influence of these five vices are considered to be sins. And unfortunately, no religion has ever told how to come out of those sins. Well, they say that these are sins to some extent, but they don't ask you to refrain from that. They say only rape is a sin, but they don't say sex itself is a sin. So if you get addicted to sex, obviously you are going to rape when you have no other alternative. So that's going to happen in the near future, as mentioned in Bible and Quran, because the world destruction is very near now. Actually, it's happening. You are seeing many sorts of rapes, even child abuses that's been going on, and we tend to punish them. But we are already on that path. Unless you give up sex totally, nothing could stop you from getting stop from becoming a rapist in the end. When you have no courage to rape an adult girl, that's when you're going to prey on small kids. So that's eventually bound to happen. And when you don't get a girl, then you are going to get a guy to have sex with. That's what homosex is all about. That's going to happen for sure. It is mentioned in Bible. The whole village is filled with homosexuals in Lot's village. Don't think that happened in the past. Those religious scriptures are nothing but the predictions of the future. That was not something that happened in the past. If it were something that happened in the past, that wouldn't be called religious scriptures. Instead, it would be called as history. That was not history. Whether or not you know it, all humans have become addicted to consuming meat and having sex. So when you have no choice, only then you will start feeding on pork and start having all those forbidden sexual acts. That's definitely going to happen. It's mainly because as much as we indulge in those sensual pleasures, we lose the power of the soul very fastly. Now, no soul has the power to refrain from sex or to refrain from satisfying their taste buds. But if you keep on going like that, what would happen eventually is you would be punished. Not after going to God, because you can't go to God without becoming clean. So the punishment will happen here itself. So like rape or something like that. Now we are saying child abuses. If you ask any Muslim what sin that child commit to face such wild rape, they can't answer. But the answer is there. It is because a guy was actually having sex with many girls. It may or may not be rape, but having sex with many girls or having sex with his wife, very indulgent, becoming very addicted to sex. So what happens is he will be punished for that in the next birth. While he was a child, he would be raped by someone who is a sinner. So he would be raping that. For that, the child was punished. And this guy who raped that child will eventually get caught and he will be punished by the people. So both are punished. That's the law of God. So to avoid that punishment, you should isolate yourself from the habit of killing animals to satisfy your taste bud and to refrain from any sort of lust, even looking at girls in a lustful way. So that's the beginning stage. If you just leave that happen, so that will eventually take you into being called a rapist. So as I already mentioned, we don't have that power. So to get that power, we have to remember God. That's why we have to remember God. In Quran it is mentioned God created us to pray to Him. What? Is God a psycho? No. The actual creation process happens only now. This is the creation process. That is converting the wicked, sinful Kali-yuga men into the Satyug divine deity. That's the actual creation, and that creation happens at the end of the world. This is called Sangam Yuga, where human souls meet the Supreme Soul, God Shiv or Allah. The more we remember God as a point of light after considering ourselves to be the soul separate from this body, the more power our souls get. So what happens eventually is we will be getting more and more power and more powerful we become, more is the chance that we conquer these 5 vices, and especially the lust, which is the number one vice, or which is the number one enemy of mankind. So is that enough to think of God, Allah, just as a point of light? Well, not enough, because we are surrounded by Saturn. These 5 vices are called Saturn or Ravan or Maya. So it is their kingdom now. This hell is the kingdom of Ravan. So they wouldn't allow you to follow on the steps of God. So they would say, no, our religion doesn't prohibit us from consuming meat or having sex. Something like that will, the Saturn will talk to you. You know what? It is the Saturn that created all religions. So that's why we fight in the name of religions. Saturn in one religion reveals something. In another religion, it reveals something totally contradicting to that of the pre-existing religion. That's how people fight in the name of religion. That's how the world is going to get distracted eventually. But make no mistake, only very, very few will catch the hand of God and listen to the words directly given by God. And so is the ones who enter the kingdom of heaven. Very few will enter. In the beginning, there would be only 9 lakhs. And towards the end of heaven, it would be 33 crores. That's why we in India have the habit of saying 33 crore deities, right? So not everybody would come in the beginning. Only those who have more power, they would come in the beginning and start enjoying the full heaven. So how do we get power? By remembering God. The more you remember God, the more you accumulate that power. So if you have more power, you will come in the beginning itself. If you don't have that much power, then you will be entering in the middle or in the end of heaven or just in hell. So it is you who determines your fate. And you want to know which was heaven? This India, especially in and around New Delhi, that was called heaven in the beginning. So that would be filled with gold. That's why we read in history books that so and so nationalists, they came to India and robbed us of all the golds. So how did we have gold in the first place? It was the gift of God. Why? For the purity that we maintain by following God's orders. As mentioned in Quran, God created us to pray Him, not to pray Him, to remember Him, because praying is something that devotees do. So devotees who follow their religion, whatever they do, that is called devotion or bhakti. But after belonging to God, this is the path of knowledge, not the path of devotion. So now what we do is we are remembering God as our Father so lovingly. We don't worship our Father, do we? So we remember God. Why? It is only by remembering God that we get the power to get rid of all sinful thoughts that we have been accumulated over previous births. That's why He asks us to remember Him. Not for His good, but for us. He is not going to gain anything. He is not even going to come to heaven. That's why He is called love. God is love, selfless love. So He creates heaven and He makes us, He qualifies us to enter heaven, and He doesn't come. He comes only in the hell to save us from hell. That's why He is called as the embodiment of love. So, as I already mentioned, it's not enough just to remember God, but also we need to listen to God. He enters an old man's body and gives His teachings called Murli. It is available totally free of cost in all Raj Yoga meditation centers. And also you can Google it online. It is available in all languages. You can Google it as Telugu Murli, English Murli, Hindi Murli, Russian Murli, whatever. You Google it, and in that particular site there would definitely be some option to locate the address of the center in your country. So you can also SMS me to this mobile number so that I can help you locate the address of the Raj Yoga Meditation Center in your area, and the number is +91 98 946 71743. So it is by having control over our senses we gain control over the whole world. We conquer lust, thereby we conquer the whole world. By conquering ourselves from becoming addicted to these 5 vices, we are conquering the whole world. Om Shanti. Thanks for watching for this long, and we'll be seeing in another video. Till then, it is BK Saravana Kumar, the direct beloved son of God Shiv, the God of all religions. If you like this video, please hit on the like button and leave your valuable comments and share this with your friends and relatives and subscribe it. Om Shanti.